What I'd like to make sure is that you can walk away from this class learning something really valuable. And how do we do this? Well, throughout this class, I'm going to ask you to do some exercises. And some of these exercises, especially since most of you are just starting on this road to the GMAT score, 700 plus score, you're going to find these exercises maybe a little outside of your comfort zone. And that's completely okay, because this is how we learn. This is how we get to experience something we haven't experienced before, so that we can actually develop some new skills, new habits, and new experiences. So please don't be afraid to get outside of your comfort zone. In fact, I'd like to ask you to participate fully. Take some notes. Put things in a chat box, in a Q&A box if you have questions, because this is how you're going to get to walk away with something really valuable. The learning is here for you to take, not for me to give. So please do take maximum advantage of this workshop. And I've done a lot of these workshops, and what I found is that if you really tune your brain for getting the most out of this workshop, you're going to walk away saying, wow, I've learned so much today. In fact, I'd like to ask you just a couple of questions, and this is really going to help us get the most out of this workshop. And the question is, when it comes to preparing for the GMAT right now, you've come here, and I really want to congratulate you because you're very serious about preparing for the GMAT. So what's most important to you right now? You've already answered some questions. And for some of you, the most important thing would be to have a good structure, right? For some of you, the most important thing would be to have a good study plan or good guidance. So answer this question in your head right now. What's most important to you to walk away with? And then the second question is, why is it so important to you? And for some of you might be, well, I need to have a good study plan because I am planning to get my GMAT done by, let's say, August or September, because I'm planning to apply to a business school and start in January, right? So this is why it's so important for me to have this study plan. And then finally, having a good study plan, what would it do to you? And the answer might be different for all of you. I'm just giving you an example. What would it do to me going to the business school in January? What would it do? How would my life be different? For some of you, it might be, well, I'm going to take my career to the next level, or I'm going to now finally do the job that I really would like to do, or maybe I'll switch my career. Again, the answer will be different to you. And as you have the answers in your head, I'd just like to invite you to notice how throughout this seminar that we're going to do today for the next almost 2 hours, how the information we're going to talk about today is going to so closely relate to what's really important to you right now. And this is how you really get the maximum benefit out of this sort of training that we provide. So now, I want to make sure that we are fully engaged. And we're going to start by doing a question. This is a question from one of the past exams, and this is a critical reasoning question. So it's a verbal reasoning question. I'm going to show you the question. You'll read the question, you'll read the passage. I'll give you approximately 45 seconds to try to understand what's going on in this passage. And then we're going to try to answer this question. So here is the question. I'll be quiet for about 45 seconds. Okay, so this has been 45 seconds, and I'm not yet going to ask you if you can answer this question. I'm going to ask a simpler question. How many times did you read this passage? If you could please put an answer in the chat box, I would appreciate it. Just put 1, 2, 3, or many. How many times did you read? Oh, thank you. So most of you said 2 times or 3 times. And let me ask you another question. After reading this, 2 or maybe 3 times. I certainly didn't give you a lot of time. So for most of you, probably 2 times. And if you're a fast reader, maybe 3 times. Could you honestly say that you understand exactly what's going on in this passage and you're ready to answer this question? You understand exactly what's going on in this passage. Okay, exactly. Well, the passage is a little confusing. Hopefully the answer choices are gonna clear things out for us. So let me show you the answer choices. Hopefully once you see them, everything's going to be much more clear in your head. So here are the answer choices. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to now read them and pick the one that you think is answering this question correctly. All right, well, we have only about a third of people voted so far. So I'm going to give you 5 more seconds, choose an answer, and then we'll talk about this question. All right, so let me show you what you have voted for. According to your votes, C should be the right answer, and then B is the second right answer. And as you could see, there are choices for every single answer choice. So it looks like a difficult question because regardless of what the right answer is, not more than 30% of people got it right if the answer is indeed C. Now, if you found the answer choice is much clearer than the passage, please put it in the chat box. But I would only imagine if I were to hallucinate that I think some of you found the answer choices also not very clear and even more confusing sometimes. So let's go back to the passage. Now, the passage is an argument that's made by an ethicist. So who is an ethicist? This is a person who studies ethics. This is a philosopher. Now, this person is making an argument, right? And we need to answer a question about this argument. Most specifically, we've noticed that there's a part in this argument that is bolded, and we need to answer a question, why is it there? What sort of a role does it play in this argument? Now, most people, when they see this argument for the first time, they will read this multiple times. They're gonna try to understand it, they'll realize they don't, and then they're going to just hope for the best. Now, when you read in this passage, let me ask you a question. This is a passage on ethics. So do you really have to be an expert in ethics in order to answer this question? Or do you have to be an expert in ethics in order to do well on the GMAT? What do you think? Not really, right? I think you have to be ethical. This is important, but you don't have to be an expert in it. Certainly not to the degree with which this person is an expert in ethics. So that is why what we really need is to know what would be necessary for us to understand in order to answer this question. And you'd be surprised to know that what's necessary for us to understand is this much. Now, the words that I've just highlighted are the words that we can all really understand. It would be a mistake to say. That means that somebody is wrong, and the author believes that these people are wrong. And of course, he or she is right. Now, this is a pretty bold statement, right? And we call this statement the claim of an argument. If somebody were to make this statement, they better prove their point. They better explain why do they believe that they're right and other people are wrong. So that is why the argument is going to try to explain it. And these words in bold are actually trying to explain why he or she believes that these people are wrong. Now, most specifically, you would notice that this statement in bold begins with the words for although it is true. Now, what we can pull out from this is that the author in this case agrees with a part of the argument. He specifically or she agrees with this part in bold, but disagrees with the way that people interpret it. All right, so here's what we found. Let me just summarize. We start with a claim, then we support the claim. And that part that supports the claim, the part right in the middle, the bolded part, is something the author agrees with. All right, let's now go to the answer choices. C was the most popular answer choice, so I'd like to start with C. Now, C tells us that part in bold is a faulty claim. Wait a second, I don't have to read any more of that because it's not faulty. The author said it's true. So I can reject C right off the bat. I don't even have to keep reading it. Well, let's keep going. Let's go to D and then we'll come back up. So D says, it is according to the argument a commonly held opinion that is nevertheless, oh wait, false. That's wrong. We said it's true. E, it reports an observation that the argument claims is, oh wait a second, false. Again, E is wrong. We're down to 2 answer choices. Now, let me ask you a question. And it's not a rhetorical question. I'm actually expecting an answer, please, in the chat box. When I'm down to 2 answer choices, how many of them do I have to read? I've already rejected 3 other. I'm down to 2. How many of these 2 do I have to read in order to answer this question? Yes, thank you. Well, I'm so impressed. You guys are catching on to this. I just have to read 1 because if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it has to be the other one. Now, I want to be lazy. I don't have too much time on this test, so I'm going to read A. It's shorter. A says it is a claim for which the argument attempts to provide justification. So A tells us that this part in bold is a claim. Wait a second, it wasn't a claim. It was a support to the claim that these people are on. It wasn't the main claim. So A is wrong, B is right. So if you got B, congratulations. And notice how we can answer this question without really understanding what in the world this person was trying to say. It wasn't that important. And that brings us to a very important point about what the GMAT's all about. It's not about knowing ethics. In fact, it's not about knowing business. It's an exam to get into a business school. It's not about knowing anything about any other subject matter. Instead, what the GMAT exam will try to measure, and they will do this quite successfully, is someone's ability to demonstrate a higher order reasoning skills. We'll come back to this again and again today, but the GMAT is really all about demonstrating the skills that matter. When Beth is going to come in and when you talk to any business school, you'll usually hear, well, we would like for you to have certain skills, quantitative skills, the communication skills, the soft skills. The skills are what's really important. Now, please don't get me wrong. You do need to have some basic knowledge, really basic. And we're talking about geometry, algebra, some statistics. And by the way, this is a quote directly from the GMAT, from people who create the test. So all of this basic knowledge is just all there to demonstrate different types of reasoning skills. Now, by the way, how basic is the knowledge? You may have heard that the GMAT is testing theory from high school. That is not true. That is absolutely not true. The theory is from middle school. 95% of the theory is from middle school. Some of it is actually from the elementary school. There's a very, very small part of the GMAT that is from high school. That also means it's been a while ago. Right? So let's talk about what are we going to actually do today. We're going to talk about what everybody should know before beginning to study for the GMAT. So I really want to congratulate you on being here. You are going to start right on your preparation. I know many of you are just starting. We'll talk about what is the most frequently overlooked step in the GMAT study plans. Many of you said, I need to go to have a good study plan. So you will have the exact process of how you're going to have a study plan at the end of this workshop. We'll, of course, talk about the verbal concepts that are really important. You'll walk away with some practical strategies you can use right now on some of the verbal questions. We'll talk about some of the verbal traps of how the GMAT is trying to get you into the wrong direction. You should not be getting into these traps anymore after today's class. And we're going to spend the last half an hour talk about some insider tips of successful MBA applications. Now, why the insider tips? Because Beth actually works on the inside. She's going to come in and share with you some of the things off the record that you're not going to find so easily on the website. So please make sure to stick around till the end of this workshop. Let me share a little bit about me, just so I can introduce myself. So my name is Sergey. I work for Admit Master. I already have my MBA. In fact, I have 3 university degrees, a bachelor and 2 masters, 1 in mathematics, 1 in MBA. I have scored really well on the GMAT. I scored 750. This was my first and only attempt. I've been teaching the GMAT right now for 10 years, and I consider the GMAT a challenge. I still learn everything every day, and in addition to the GMAT, I have some other passions or hobbies that are also skills-based. I love sailing a boat in the summer and snowboarding in the winter. They're actually somewhat similar sports. They use the forces of nature for the movement. So it's really interesting how you could direct the force of nature to help you get into the right direction. And you can do the same with the GMAT. You can direct the force of the GMAT to help you find the right answer. So I think you're going to find a lot of similarities. Now, I do personally think that almost everybody who works for Admit Master is smarter than me. I learn from them every day. And that is why this workshop summarizes a lot of experience. If I were to combine all of the years of experience from our instructors who contributed to this workshop, it would be over 70 years among all of them. And you're going to get 7 years of experience in 2 fast-paced hours. So let's actually talk about what to expect on the GMAT. Let's talk about what to expect on the GMAT in general. Now, the format of the test is as follows. The GMAT consists of 4 sections. You're going to write an essay. You're also going to do 12 mini business cases in half an hour, so very, very fast-paced section. Then you're going to do the math section, which is called quantitative reasoning, and then the verbal section, which is actually called verbal reasoning. And all of this experience is approximately 3.5 hours long. At the end of your test, you're going to get a score. And in fact, you're going to get multiple scores. You're not just going to get a score of 200 to 800. You're going to get individual scores for each section of the test. And the scores for quant and verbal sections contribute towards your total score. So the total score consists of these scores from quant and verbal. So depending on how well you do on these 2 sections, you're going to get a total score. Now, speaking more specifically about these 2 sections, on the quant section, you're going to get 2 question types. And if you haven't been to our Math Refresher class, the next one is on July 14th. The 2 question types are problem solving and data sufficiency. Data sufficiency is very unique to the GMAT. Now, the verbal reasoning section, the section we're going to talk about today, has 3 question types: sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension. We are going to be talking about all 3 question types today. Now, you might be wondering, well, how are the scores actually calculated? Now, I know there's this score 0 to 60, but I only get about 30 questions. So how is that possible that the GMAT is so accurate in calculating somebody's score with so few questions? And that is because the GMAT uses a pretty sophisticated algorithm that's called the computer adaptive algorithm. Now, I'm sure you know what's a computer, and I can almost imagine that you know what is a test. But what does it mean, adaptive? Well, what this means is that the test is going to get harder as you're answering the questions correctly, and it's going to get easier as you're answering the questions incorrectly. So towards the end of the test, the GMAT, by giving you easier or harder questions, pretty much knows where you stand and what difficulty of questions can you handle. And that is how the GMAT is going to calculate the score. It's going to do it on quant and verbal, and then these 2 scores are going to be put together to calculate the total score. So you may have heard that the GMAT uses some sort of a secret formula to calculate the scores. And that's indeed true. It's a pretty sophisticated formula, but I do have to say that I was super excited when I went to a conference. So the GMAT, the organization that actually creates the test, has a conference specifically for just very few test prep organizations that have been around for a while, that are doing a good job preparing students. The GMAT invites us for free to the headquarters every year, and they share with us a lot of really interesting, cool things about the test, except of course the real questions. They can't do that. So they have shared with us that secret formula, and I'm so excited to share this with you. Let me show it to you. This is the secret formula. Yeah, I know. When you look at this formula, me with a master of math, I'm like, all right, where do I start? So it's not particularly a very useful formula, even though I think it's really cool. What do we need to know from this formula? What do we need to understand about the way that the scores are calculated? Well, here's some of the things we need to walk away with. Number one, not every question matters. 10% of math and 20% of verbal questions are experimental. That means no matter how well you do on them or how poorly you do on them, they would not contribute towards your score. And so keep that at the back of your mind. Of course, you wouldn't know which questions are experimental, so you can't really skip them. But at the same time, if you really, really are invested in a question and you're hoping to get it right, if you only were to spend the next 10 minutes on it, well, keep that in mind. That question could have been experimental. You may also have heard that the first 10 questions are more important. And that's why you should be spending a lot of time doing these questions. That is absolutely not true. The first 10 questions are not more important. They're equally important as all of the other questions. Now, the algorithm, the way it adapts, yes, it adapts a little faster at the beginning, but the weight of the questions at the beginning is exactly the same as the weight at the end. There is, however, a pretty big penalty for unanswered questions. So if you are in a time crunch and if you're feeling that you cannot answer all of the questions, then just randomly guess towards the end in order for you to finish that section. Well, ideally, of course, manage your time well, and that is absolutely something that it's one of the skills that you should be keeping in mind when you're preparing for the GMAT is how do I manage my time well? There's going to be certain exercises that you need to do. So in our class, we spend a lot of time managing the time well because it's so important on the GMAT. Now, I know some of you might be taking the GMAT fairly soon. Right now, with the environment that we're in, the GMAT is available both in the test centers and online. If you are in Canada, most of the test centers are already open. In some of the other parts of the world, they are also open. In some of the parts of the world, they're still closed. So as long as the test centers somewhere are going to be closed, you could still take the online GMAT exam. Let me give you just a really, really quick difference between the regular and the online exam. Of course, the biggest difference is at the regular exam, you have to show up at the test center at a certain specific time. In the online exam, you can take the exam from home. It's still going to be proctored. Everything's going to be video recorded at home through a webcam, just like you see me right now. In the test center, there's going to be a ceiling overhead cam that records everything. And the exam is pretty much almost the same. I'm going to tell you a very quick difference between the exam. There's a little bit of a price difference. And also the online GMAT exam is an exam you can take only once. Now, if you've already taken the online GMAT exam with the online whiteboard, you can retake it with a physical whiteboard. But once you take it once with a physical whiteboard, it is really a once in a lifetime opportunity. And the regular exam, you can take a maximum of 8 times. I don't know why somebody would actually want to take the exam 8 times. I mean, if you're not prepared, don't go for the exam. And if you are prepared and you're not nervous and you're confident, you should be getting a good score on your first attempt. The regular exam gives you an option to choose the different order of the sections. The online exam does not. The online exam will always start from a quant section, then you're going to do the verbal section, a very short break, then IR. There's actually no essay in the at-home exam. So if you're really worried about the essay, I don't think why you should. The average score of our students on the essay is 5.8, 5.9. So if you know what you're doing, you can easily get a score of 6 or at least 5.5 on the essay. The total experience is going to be a little quicker. It's going to be approximately 3 hours in total with one 5-minute break. All right, so now that we've got introduced to the GMAT, I'm sure that you probably have a question that pops in your mind, and that question is, all right, well, this is all interesting, but can I personally get a score of 700 on the GMAT or more? And I'm sure that you have this question in your mind right now, and many of you do. And I can hallucinate that most of you have this question in your mind right now. How do I do this? I came to this workshop to find out, how do I actually get a score of 700 or more? Now, we'll answer both of these questions, but I want to answer the first question first. Can I get that score? And the answer is absolutely yes. Anybody can get that score. It does not matter whether English is your first or fifth language. Doesn't really matter if you are a math person or you're not. If you've been out of school for just a couple of years or maybe 20 years, you can get a score of 700 or more. I worked with over 15,000 people in my 10 years of being a GMAT instructor, and I can tell you I've seen people who did not believe that they have the right background for the GMAT, and they ended up with scores in the 760 range. Right? So it's absolutely possible. But of course, anybody can get that score of 700, but not everybody will get that score. In fact, if you've been to a math refresher class, I'm not going to repeat all of the calculations for you, but I can just tell you that of everybody who wants to do the GMAT, everybody who wants to do an MBA, only 0.3% of people will reach a score of 700 or more. Now, you might be wondering, why is it only 0.3%? Because not everybody will actually end up doing the test. Many people who begin studying for the test will give up. That's why if you really exclude these people, it comes to only 1/3% of people who are going to reach a 700 plus score on the GMAT. So how do you actually make sure that you are not in the 99.7%, but you're in the 0.3%, that you actually do get that 700 plus score? I'm going to give you a quick answer, and of course, I'll give you a longer answer throughout this workshop. And that is, if you know somebody in the 99.7%, somebody who began studying for the GMAT and either didn't do the test or didn't get a good score, ask them, what have they done? And whatever they tell you, make sure you don't do it. Instead, find out who has gotten a score of 700 or more, and make sure you find more than one person and ask them, what have they done? And do it. Repeat after people who've done really well. That is why here at Admit Master, we hire only instructor who scored in the 760 plus range. In fact, I'm the only instructor who got 750 on the GMAT. Everybody else got 760 or more. And so that's 0.03% on the GMAT. And of course, you can learn a lot from these people because they all scored the scores in the top 1%. So regardless of what score you would like, you can learn some valuable strategies. Now, how do most people try to study for the test? And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a preview, just maybe you don't know the friends who have already begun studying. Well, most people are going to say, well, what I need to do is hit the books. So I'm going to go and pick up a book in a library or book in a bookstore, and maybe I see multiple different books, and an average person will probably have about 10 or 12 GMAT books. They'll be completely overwhelmed, and that's why 90% of people who begin studying for the test wouldn't even book the real test. So if you ask people, well, what do I need? If they're just simply reading the books and overwhelming ourselves with so much information, the information is freely available, right? All of the information is on the internet right now. So it's not about the information. What is it about? Well, some people are going to say, what I need is practice. I need practice because practice makes perfect. The more I practice, the more perfect I'm going to be in the GMAT. Well, that's only partially true. I like to use a different word, and that is, when you keep practicing, whatever people practice, eventually that becomes a habit, and habits are permanent. When people are stressed out, they're going to revert back to what they're most comfortable with, which is their habits. So practice makes a habit. Practice makes permanent. Practicing using some bad strategies is going to help develop some bad habits. And on the day of the test, people are going to fall back into the bad habits. practicing using good strategies, the strategies that are going to be efficient. Maybe the strategies that were not easy to find or easy to learn, but the good strategies will lead to developing good habits. And therefore, on the day of the test, if somebody's stressed out, they're going to fall back into the habits, but they have their good habits. And that's why most of the people who get scores, many of our students who get scores 740, 750, 760 range, they would walk out and would say, look, I was calm, I was collected, and it almost felt like the exam is easy because I knew what I was doing. I was just following my habits. And that's really the idea, right? So again, we'll talk back about what is that part that's missing. But before the books and the practice, it's really, really important. You can write this down or keep this at the back of your mind that you learn these good strategies up front. Because whatever strategies you practice, these strategies will become habits. So be careful about what strategies you learn. And that brings us to an important question about the verbal section. And that is the GMAT verbal really hard? Is it hard? I don't know. I'd like to ask you, is it hard? I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to please choose an answer here in a poll. You can choose all of the ones that you think, in your opinion, apply in this case. But is it hard? I mean, when it comes to math, at least math sometimes for some people is a little scarier because they haven't done math for a while. But for some people, math is a little easier because at least it involves some numbers. On the verbal section, there are no numbers. So where do I even start? And some people are going to say, well, look, I speak English as a first language, so it should be easy. It's not really hard. I mean, it's just all common sense. And so thanks so much for participating. Thanks so much for choosing this answer. And I could tell you the most popular answer is that several answer choices look right. And then the second most popular was that what's to read and not enough time. So let's actually dig a little bit deeper. Thanks so much for participating. I'm going to end the poll right now. So let's talk about what questions you're going to see, and you actually get to experience a little bit what's the difference between knowing things and being able to do things, knowing how to apply things. There is a pretty big difference. Now, when it comes to sentence correction, of course, the objective is to correct a sentence. But what exactly are we correcting in a sentence? Well, I mean, we could potentially correct many things. Some people might say punctuation, some people might say spelling, but these two things are actually not tested. What is tested are three things. Number one, grammar. Number two, meaning. And number three, style. Now, the GMAT calls them a little bit different. If you look at the official guide, the meaning is going to be called the logical predication, and the style is going to be called rhetorical construction. It's really hard to understand what in the world these words mean. So let's strive for clarity. We use these words in our course: grammar, meaning, and style. Now, when it comes to grammar, I know some of you said, well, there's so many grammar rules. And indeed, that is true. English is the most complicated language in the world, not because the grammar is that complicated, but because it's a language that was created out of many other languages, French, German, and many others, Latin. And that is why for every grammar rule, there also is an exception. And English has over 500,000 words. A second language is German. It doesn't even come close to the quantity of words. So here's some good news. I've overwhelmed you a little with the amount of grammar, but the good news is that the GMAT doesn't test 500,000 words. In fact, the GMAT does not test vocabulary at all. So if you ever hear a word such as GMAT vocabulary, I would turn around and run away immediately, because there is no such thing as the GMAT vocab. There is one on the GRE, for example, but not on the GMAT. And on the GMAT, when it comes to the grammar, you need to know just a small number of English grammar rules. In fact, 9 rules cover 95% of the questions on the GMAT sentence correction questions, and only 5 rules cover 80% of questions. So if you learn these 5 rules, you can deal with 80% of sentence correction questions. So what is the most common rule? Well, that's a rule of a basic structure of a sentence. Now, in the English language, unlike in some other languages, a short sentence that's written as a descriptor sentence that's describing something. These are going to be the majority of the sentences on the, it certainly is going to be all of the sentences in sentence correction. So these sentences must follow this rule. They must have a minimum of 2 words that create the skeleton of the sentence. Does anybody know what are these 2 words? What roles do these 2 words play? The minimum of 2 words in the English sentence. If you don't have these 2 words, that is not a full sentence. Does anybody know what these words are? Yes, so yeah, absolutely. It's a subject and a verb, or a noun and a verb, or a subject or a predicate. It's technically a subject and a predicate. These are the parts of the sentence, and a noun and the verb are the parts of the speech. It's not really that important for our discussion. So the subject is what or whom the sentence is about, and the verb is what the subject is doing, or sometimes we use the verb to be or to have to describe a state of being of the subject. So that's really important. And sometimes the GMAT will very cleverly omit one of them, usually the verb. So for example, we could say Sergey is studying for the GMAT. So that would be a proper sentence because it has a subject, Sergey, and the verb is studying. Sometimes the GMAT will simply say Sergey studying for the GMAT. Well, on the first glance, studying looks like a verb, but it's actually not. In this case, it becomes a participle. The verb to be or is missing. Therefore, it's no longer a full sentence. The GMAT calls it a sentence fragment. Therefore, this choice, this option, would not be the right answer. So you gotta watch out for these. What's even more common is that the subject and a verb sometimes disagree. Well, what does it mean, disagree? Well, there is a rule that's called the agreement rule, and that's really one of the most commonly tested rules on the GMAT. And that is, if you have a subject and a verb, they must agree in number. For example, if I have a singular subject, a bird, I must have a singular verb, sings. If I have a plural subject, birds, I must have plural verbs, sing. So a bird sings, birds sing. Looks pretty straightforward, right? We'll see how the GMAT is testing this. Now, you mentioned that the subject is actually a noun. Well, what's interesting is not every noun is a subject. Every subject is a noun, well, almost always. Sometimes it could be a pronoun, but not every noun is a subject, because a noun could also be an object. Now, an object is a person, place, or a thing that does not do anything in the sentence. Essentially, it doesn't have a verb. A subject does, a verb doesn't. Sergey is studying for the GMAT. While Sergey is a subject, he's studying. The GMAT's an object. The GMAT does not do anything in this sentence. So when you're trying to match the subject and a verb in number, when you're trying to test for this agreement rule, just be aware that not every noun is actually going to be then agreeing with a verb, because it might not have a verb. Only subjects have a verb. Now, how do you actually decide when you have a subject and when you have an object? A very useful rule is going to be a rule of a preposition. So what is a preposition? Preposition is a very short word that connects nouns together. Do you know any prepositions? Just if you know any prepositions, please put them in a chat box. I'm just curious. I'm going to give you some examples in a moment. All right, so these are the prepositions: of, in, for, towards, away, above, below. These are prepositions. And is actually not a preposition. But we have a lot of other prepositions. For example, the most common preposition tested on the GMAT is the preposition of, and then the second most common are prepositions to, or the second and third are to and for. Most common prepositions. So why the preposition so useful is because prepositions always precede objects, never subjects. So if you have something, I am giving this remote control to my friend, well, my friend now automatically becomes an object. So I'm never going to try to look for a verb for my friend because my friend was after a preposition. That rule will help you get rid of the majority of the nouns in a sentence. So you're going to have a very small number of nouns that are left, and then you just need to choose among these nouns what is actually the subject. Sometimes it's hard to find the subject. It's easier, of course, to find the noun. So that's how you can narrow down your list of all of the nouns to actually find the subject. A very useful rule, please remember it, the rule of a preposition. We're not quite done with the agreement yet. We talked about the subject-verb agreement. There's another agreement rule, and that is the agreement of pronouns. So what is a pronoun? Well, the pronoun is the short word, or pronouns are short words that replace nouns. So instead of me repeating the nouns over and over and over again, I can replace it with the pronouns. Sergey is studying for the GMAT because he wants to get a 760 score. Right? I used he because I've already said Sergey. I don't want to repeat Sergey again. Now, when I'm replacing something with something else, I need to make sure I'm replacing it properly, because I could potentially make a mistake when I'm replacing it. So when you have a pronoun in a sentence, it's really important to check for a couple of things. Number one is that the pronoun refers very clearly to the noun it is replacing. So I know exactly what that pronoun refers to. Number two, it should agree with the noun it's replacing. Right? So it should be the appropriate pronoun. I shouldn't be using a pronoun that doesn't fit with that noun. Now, let me give you a couple of examples so that you could see how the pronoun could potentially be used improperly. Let me show you this example, and let me ask you, first of all, where's the pronoun? Secondly, is it used properly? And thirdly, if it's not, what would you replace it with in order for the sentence to be a proper sentence? So where's the pronoun? That's number one. Is it used properly, yes or no? And if not, what would you want to use here instead in order for the sentence to be a proper sentence? Okay, exactly. So it is not, so she's a pronoun. It is not used properly, exactly just like you've shared, thank you, because we do not know whether she refers to Melissa or Elizabeth. Therefore, instead of she, we actually want to say a name. We have two people whom the pronoun she could potentially refer to. Now, you might be saying, well, wait a second. If Melissa is visiting Elizabeth, Elizabeth is in the hospital, Melissa is visiting her, is it just logical to assume that Elizabeth was feeling unwell because she's in a hospital? Well, maybe, but we made an assumption. Maybe Elizabeth is a doctor and Melissa is actually feeling unwell and she's going to visit Dr. Elizabeth in the hospital. We don't know that. So a good lesson learned from here is don't ever make your own assumptions. If we don't know who is she, we can't really use the pronoun here. And let me give you another example. I love shopping at Walmart because they have good prices. Is that a proper sentence, yes or no? Okay, yeah, most of you are saying, yes, it is a proper sentence. All right. Well, this is how we speak. And this is how we speak every day. I go to Walmart because they have good prices. Well, let's talk about this. They is plural. So by the rule of the agreement, a plural pronoun should refer to a plural noun. Walmart is a company. It's a singular name. It's a singular noun. Now, sometimes in our mind, we automatically say, well, Walmart stores or Walmart people. We don't actually say this, and it's acceptable to say it because we kind of know what we're talking about. But grammatically, certainly in the written language, Walmart is just the name of the company. Because it was singular, we need to say because it has good prices. I mean, who talks like this, right? And that's why the GMAT, of course, is going to try to use the way we talk against us, because let's just be honest, we sometimes don't talk good. I can tell you, though, that even after this workshop, most of us are going to talk gooder, for sure. Let me give you another example. This GMAT class is for you and I or you and me? This is a slightly harder agreement rule here, but certainly there is an agreement rule here at play. So let me know, is it you and I or you and me? Okay, well, yeah, so most people are saying you and I. What's the difference? What's right? Maybe both could be right. I know if you listen to Rihanna, you'll say that you and I is right, but maybe sometimes it's you and me. And if you're not sure, here's what I would suggest. The word you here is the same, so get rid of you and just say this GMAT class is for I. Would that be right? Or would it be this GMAT class is for me? Of course, it would be the GMAT class is for me. And the difference was the difference between a subject and an object. I is a subjective pronoun. I am studying for the GMAT, but the GMAT class is for me. There's a preposition for in front of me. So if you remember that preposition rule that we actually just learned, right? So that's why it's so important to know how to apply the rule and not just know the rule. That's really where the bulk of the learning is. It's learning by doing. It's developing habits. It's knowing how to apply the rules. That's what's really important in this sort of training. And of course, if you forgot the rule, you could use a shortcut, or you could use a little hack, and that is just get rid of what's the same, and that is you. Look for what's different. There's another very important habit, very important skill, is to be able to notice the difference. And the difference here was I or me. So I'm not going to focus on you. I'm going to focus on I and me, and I'm going to make a decision just based on these two. Let's talk about the second one. Who or whom is this class for? What's right? What's wrong? Or maybe both. And let's just be honest. Do we always use who or whom properly in our everyday spoken language? I don't know about you, but I certainly don't. But there is a rule. And again, that's exactly the same rule we talked about 30 seconds ago. For is a preposition. For actually here is in front of who or whom. When the preposition is at the end, it refers to what's at the beginning. So you can say, is this class for who? Or is this class for whom? Well, what's the difference between who and whom? It's again the difference between a subject and an object. Or because I had a preposition, I need to use an object. And if you remember that, again, you're not going to have any trouble with this. Again, comes with training, but there's a hack, a little life hack, and that is answer the question. What's the answer? This class is for they or them. So if you ask the question who, the answer should be they. If you ask the question whom, the answer should be them. So who is this class for? It's for them, right? It's not for they, it's for them. That's why the question was whom, because the answer is them. So you need to know both. Knowing the theory is important, knowing how to apply it is important, and it really comes down to developing that good habit. And here we've learned a lot of good habits. how to look for the differences, how to answer the question, how to remember some of these hacks. All right. Well, now that we've learned this, I am sure, no, not both wrong, it's for them. So I am sure that we can now put these skills to practice. We have learned the skills that are going to be necessary to do the next question. So let me pull up a GMAT question, a real question from, again, one of the past exams. It is going to be a sentence correction question. You would notice a part of the sentence is underlined, and you have 5 versions of that underlined part. Version A is the same as the original sentence, and B, C, D, and E are different variations. I'm going to give you 1 minute and 30 seconds. I'm going to be quiet for the entire 90 seconds. Do whatever you think is necessary to choose the right answer in your opinion. Fifteen more seconds. Please choose an answer if you haven't voted yet. The poll should be a window that popped up on the screen. All right, I'm going to stop the poll in just 10 seconds. But in the meantime, I'm curious if you could tell me in the chat box, how did you choose the answer? Just what were you looking for? What was the strategies? Just 2-3 words. What made you choose that answer? Okay, yeah, some people are saying singular instead of plural. Anybody else? What did you choose? Looks like by the overwhelming majority, C is the right answer. Okay, subject-verb agreement. Okay, prosodormination. Yeah, what exactly? So subject-verb agreement. Yeah. Okay, some saying something that just doesn't make sense. Okay, the structure. What exactly? What exactly were you looking for? Okay, the last portion of the answer. Yeah. So what helped you choose that? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, let's see. Let's see. Yeah. Some of the people are saying it just sounds a little more logical. Now, let's look back at what we've just learned. Again, remember we just learned an agreement rule. If we were to look at the answer choices, I would notice that some of them start with sloths and some of them start with the sloth. Well, okay, so sloth is plural, the sloth is singular. So some of you were saying it's logical, right? So some people were saying that. Well, yeah, let's think logically. We probably have more than one sloth, right? So we gotta have multiple sloths, and therefore we can eliminate D and E. But some people might say, well, wait a second. I could also say the sloth if I refer to the species of the sloth. So that should be okay, right? I'm not supposed to know what is that animal. So maybe I'm going to focus on the grammar rules. So let me focus on maybe the subject-verb agreement, because that's how I can decide whether I need a single or plural noun, plural subject. Let me try to find a verb. So sloths hang, okay, that's good. Sloths hang, sloths use. Oh, wait, okay, so A, B, and C are all good in terms of subject-verb agreement. Let's look at D and E. The sloth hangs, and the sloth hangs. All right, well, these also are okay. These are singular, but the verb is also singular. So what this means is we can't really use that rule. But we'll say, well, wait a second, Sergey just said we have to use the agreement rule. Yeah, but remember there was another agreement rule. There was a subject-verb agreement rule, and we also learned the pronoun agreement rule. So the question is, do we have a pronoun? Maybe that's how we can decide whether we need to have sloth or sloths. Yeah, exactly. We just noticed that, well, wait a second, its coat and its toes. What this means is that we have one sloth, because we cannot say its if we refer to multiple sloths. So A, B, and C are automatically gone. We don't even have to read them, right? Makes total sense. All right, so now we're down to the sloths and the sloths. And now remember that second rule or second skill that we talked about is really looking for the difference. So let's look at the difference here. We have sleeping 15 hours a day and moving so infrequently, or sleeps 15 hours a day and it moves infrequently enough. Now, as you can see here, we have approximately twice as many people who chose E as opposed to D. So why E? Somebody could choose E, and Regina, I'm not sure what you're asking by may you repeat that. What exactly would you like me to repeat? If you can let me know, I can certainly repeat that. So why E? So A, B, and C are on because the pronoun its cannot refer to sloths. Its is singular. We need to refer it to a singular the sloths because its is a singular pronoun. So at this point, most people are going to say, well, E, and that's not the rule that we've learned. So sleeps would be incorrect. Okay. So many people would say E uses a parallel structure and D doesn't. So if we're saying Hank sleeps and moves, that should be okay. But Hank's sleeping and moving, that's not okay because we're talking about the same thing. And we can't really put verbs in a different form. Well, we haven't really talked about this rule. So if you have chosen E, let me just give you a really quick tip. And that is the parallel structure has to be exactly parallel. And in this case, it's not. Hank sleeps and it moves is not the same as Hank sleeps and moves. So the right answer is actually D. So if you got that right answer, congratulations. And if you didn't, congratulations that we've learned something really important. What we learned is that knowing the rule and knowing how to apply it are slightly different things. There's a process to get there and you can absolutely get there. So it's important to learn these strategies. It's important to apply them, keep applying them, keep developing these good habits, have a good attention to detail. It was really important to notice that very short pronoun. And then we can actually do this question fairly quickly because notice how A, B, and C, we didn't even have to read. We just noticed the first couple of words. And D actually is perfectly fine because sleeping and moving are not part of the same parallel structure as Hank's. These are actually what's called participle modifiers. They're describing the process of henning. So that's another way how the GMAT is trying to trick us. Well, as you can notice, 95% of people didn't get this question right. So it looks like a difficult question. It looks like a top 5% question. But if you learn how to do it, is it doable? Is it manageable? I think it is. Problem is, many people are relying on what sounds right or looks right in order to answer the questions, right? And it's not just us, it's pretty much all of us don't talk good. In fact, even if you go to a Walmart store We know they have good prices, but they don't use proper grammar because it's not okay to say 12 items or less. What should we say instead of 12 items or less? Perfect. Yes, 12 items or fewer. That's important. So don't fall into these traps. Don't choose for what sounds right, looks right, or feels right. You gotta know the rules, you gotta learn the strategies, and it's really important to master this process until it becomes a habit, a good habit. That's really important. Sounds easy, right? I wish the GMAT were this easy. Yeah, I wish it were. What do you think about this sentence? Just before we move off from sentence correction, is that a good sentence? What's wrong with this sentence? Okay, it was easy. Okay, it was easy. Yeah. Oh, some of you are saying absolutely right. Well, you'll be surprised to know that this is an absolutely right sentence. We are saying we're easy because it's actually not. It's something that's called subjunctive mood. That's actually now, of course, we talk in our advanced verbal class because it's not as common, but it certainly is something that if you know it, you can knock off usually one very hard sentence correction question right off the bat. All right, that was a good argument. So let's talk about arguments. Now, I am sure that you have seen arguments before. In fact, the arguments usually involve arguments of two people. I'm sure you've seen people argue, and sometimes it's more than two people. But on the GMAT, arguments will be usually arguments by one person. I don't know if you ever tried to argue with yourself. It sounds like fun, right? So how can one person argue? Well, a person can argue by presenting a well-structured and supported argument. So how can we support our argument? Well, I kind of gave it away already. What we need to have is, number one, we need to have some sort of a claim in the argument. Essentially, what is the argument about? What's the main idea? What are we trying to say? Let me give you an example. I came to a GMAT class today. I take my preparation seriously. I make the right decisions. Therefore, I will get a high score on the GMAT. That is my claim. Now, why do I believe that claim? Because I've provided some sort of an evidence, some reason behind that idea. And that reason is that I take my preparation seriously and I make the right decisions. That is why I will get a high score. I'm not going to be in the 99.7%. I'll be in the 0.3% because I know I can. All I need is to be committed, take it seriously, and make the right decisions. That's it. That's a pretty good evidence. That leads us to believe that the conclusion is right, that you will actually get a high score on the GMAT. So that is essentially how the arguments are structured. So every argument must have a conclusion, must have evidence. Now, sometimes the GMAT will ask you to find the conclusion or find evidence, but sometimes the GMAT will ask you to do something with it, do something with the conclusion or do something with the evidence. And that's why I'd like to do a question with you. It's going to be another critical reasoning question. Now, that question is actually going to ask you to support the argument, to support the hypothesis. Going to give you approximately 2 minutes. That's how much you get on average for these types of questions. And we'll talk about this question. So here's the question. You get 2 minutes. Another 15 seconds. So if you haven't chosen an answer yet, I know many people still haven't, just guess. Choose an answer that you think looks the best to you. All right. Let me share with you what not everybody answered that question yet, but I'm going to end the poll right now. Let me share with you what the results were. By the majority vote, the right answer was B. Well, let's find out if this is the right answer. Let's look at a few different ways of doing this question. And again, the poll should pop up on your window. If you don't see the poll, then you can just type the answer here in the chat box if that's easier for you. It should see it very clearly if you use a computer on a mobile device. Sometimes you might have to, it might be hidden behind the window. All right, so let's talk about different ways of doing this question. One of the ways is to see what sounds right. We're going to read the passage, read the question, read the answer choices. I don't know about you, but I find it's a little hard to understand at first what's going on here. So most people, when they read this passage for the first time, they'll read it about 2-3 times. And then they're going to go back to the passage after reading the question and reading the answer choices. But we have a limited time, so we got to choose an answer. We're going to look for something that's familiar. We talked about the earthquake. We talked about the island and something that happened in 8365. Well, A looks a little weird. Graves near Kurian, before and after. B, however, talks about the earthquake. It's the island, 8365, so that seems familiar. C, coins, what do they have to do with what we're talking about? Statues, inscriptions, they all sound weird. Some people are going to say it's not really in scope. So we perhaps don't really have a better reason to choose B, but we can go back, reread the question, make sure we don't have a better reason, and then choose B and move on. I don't know if this is the right answer. We'll find out in a moment. Let's see if there's a better way of doing this question. Perhaps we can use the rules way. This is when we know how to approach these types of questions. In fact, when you're reading a critical reasoning question, one of the first things we should do is read the question itself. That question is telling us which one of the following, if true, most strongly supports the hypothesis. That is what's called the strengthen question. We're trying to strengthen the argument. Then we're going to read the passage. We're going to find the conclusion, which is our hypothesis that the destruction was due to this earthquake. There's some evidence about the collapsed buildings and debris. And we're going to try to find something that will actually make this hypothesis stronger. Something will actually tell us, yeah, it was probably due to this earthquake. Well, let's look at A, drinking vessels, looks irrelevant. How about B, most modern here? Well, look, we have all this evidence. That certainly seems like it strengthens our conclusion. C, coins, statues, inscriptions. Again, these all seem irrelevant. We're going to pick B. Now we have found this evidence. It looks like it's going to make our argument better. We can certainly do it in 2 minutes, and we got the wrong answer. Yeah, I know, you might be surprised. Well, wait a second, I was so confident that B is right. Don't let that confidence go away yet. You need that confidence for the test day, but if you don't have confidence yet, that's okay, you'll build it up. Again, by learning all of these strategies. That's really the whole idea, is to be confident on the day of the test. So let's talk about the different way of doing this question. Let's call this the mastery way. This is when you've learned the strategies, you've practiced them, the good strategies, and then they became habits. So here's what we're gonna do. We read the question, it's a strengthen question. Then we're going to read the passage, we'll find the conclusion and the evidence, and indeed, the conclusion here was that the town was destroyed by this earthquake in 8365. We have some evidence that leads us to believe that the town was destroyed by some earthquake because there was a pattern of debris and collapsed buildings. We also know, by the way, that there was an earthquake in AD 365 because the last few words in this passage say that the earthquake is known to have occurred. So what's missing then? Well, what's missing in this argument is the assumption. And the assumption is something the author didn't say, and that is that it was that specific earthquake that destroyed the town. Is it possible that even though there was an earthquake that year, and even though the town was destroyed by this earthquake, or destroyed by some earthquake, what actually destroyed the town is the earthquake that happened before or after it? It's possible. So we're going to be looking for extra evidence that will tell us, oh, wait a second, it was this earthquake. Does A do that? Not really. Does B do that? Also not really, because what all that B does is tells us something we already know. It tells us there was an earthquake. Well, we already knew that. We don't need that extra information. But what about C? Well, C tells us that in AD 365, something happened, and as a result, there was no more town. So if we put all of these pieces of evidence together, there was an earthquake, some earthquake destroyed the town, oh, and by the way, the town stopped existing that year. Now we have enough of the evidence to believe stronger that indeed the town was destroyed by that earthquake. And that's all that we need. And that is why C is the right answer. That's also why we are going to stop. We don't even have to read D and E because we've already found our answer. C certainly strengthens our argument. It does make it a little more likely that the town indeed was destroyed in that year. And that tells us it's likely it was that earthquake, not some other earthquake. That's exactly what we're looking for. And if we know what we're doing, we can actually do this in less than a minute. And we got it right. Now, somebody was asking, what if the town was destroyed by something else? Well, we were told that the town was destroyed by an earthquake. There was a pattern of debris and collapsed buildings. We're not going to try to dispute that evidence. Right? We were told the town was destroyed by an earthquake. We just didn't know what earthquake. Now, is it possible that the town was actually raided by some enemies, and that's why we didn't have coins, and the town was actually destroyed maybe 1,000 years later? Yeah, definitely possible. But we were not asked to prove this argument or this hypothesis. We were just asked to support it. And we've certainly supported it by finding evidence. All right. I hope you enjoyed it. I find it fascinating. Let's talk about reading comprehension for a moment. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you get super excited about reading comprehension? Yes or no? Yes, absolutely. Wow, I am so excited. A majority of you in the chat box are saying, yes, absolutely, I'm getting super excited. Well, there's, of course, many reasons to get not very excited about reading comprehension, but there are also reasons why you shouldn't really be afraid of reading comprehension. All of the passages in reading comprehension are real passages from some scientific journals, so you can actually learn something interesting. And another thing is that you don't really need to understand what the author is saying. You already remember by now that that ethics passage that we did at the beginning. We didn't really need to understand ethics. We just needed to understand how the argument was put together. So all we need is to understand how the passages are going to put together. So I'm going to give you a really quick but an awesome formula of how you can understand the structure of an argument. So here's what we're going to do. Please pull out your pen and write this down. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to focus on how the author is making a point, not what he or she is saying. It's not really important for us to understand the subject matter. Everything you need to know about the subject matter is right in front of you. So we are going to focus on the storyline, not on the content. Good writers who write books or movie scripts, they know the content's important, but the storyline, the structure of a movie is more important because there's a formula of how the movie works, right? There's a hero, and the hero will then at some point defeat the enemy. So this storyline is repeated in multiple movies that are very successful. So we're going to now read with a different purpose. We're going to read for that storyline. Here's how we're going to do it. So please write this down. Number one, we're going to ask this question: how is the passage organized? Every time we read the passage, after every single paragraph, we're going to ask ourselves a question. What was the purpose of this paragraph? Why was this paragraph included by the author? Not what it says. Why is it there? Number two, after you finish reading the whole passage, ask yourself a question. What would be the good title for this passage or for this movie? If this were a movie, what would be a good name for this movie? And that will tell you what the passage is really all about. It's about molecular biology of single cell or cell organisms that live in the ocean, something like this. And also ask yourself a question: what was the author's tone or emotion behind the author's words? Does the author try to convince us of something? Is the author simply trying to explain a certain concept to us? What is the author really trying to do? And that's going to lead us to the fourth question: is what is the primary purpose of the passage? So if you answer these questions, what's the purpose of each paragraph? How's the passage organized? What is it really about? How does the author relate to the passage? What's the author trying to do in this passage? And what's the main purpose of this passage? Is it, again, to convince us? Is it to explain to us? Is it to argue for something? Is it to present some sort of a debate? After answering these questions, of course, this is a skill that you need to master by practicing. After this, 80% of your job in reading comprehension is done. Right, so in our reading comprehension class, we go through each step. We talk specifically about what keywords to look for. We talk about how to take your notes, how to refer back to your notes. And then once you've done that, you're almost done. Then you just need to know what types of questions the GMAT could ask and where to look for the answer. But the main skill is to really learn how to read the passage efficiently. Not necessarily quickly, efficiently. There's a difference. And it doesn't matter whether English is your first or fifth language. If you know how to read in English, you should be able to master this skill. Sounds easy, right? If all we have to do is master all of these skills, it sounds easy. So what's really missing for most people? And again, this is something that, yeah, very easy, exactly, I know. Thanks for sharing this in the chat box. So what is missing for most people? And again, I can tell you, no, this is not from my experience necessarily, but from experience working with many thousands of people over the last 10 years. And talking to even more people who came to these workshops and seminars or gone to our website and signed up for a consultation. So here's what's usually missing for most people. Number one is the structure. There is so much information out there. In fact, anything you ever want to know is out there. The only thing that's not out there are the questions from the real exams. These are secret. But everything else, questions from past exams, it's all out there. So how do I actually put all of these thousands of pieces of information in a way that will make sense? And I can do this within a short period of time. Because if I were to read everything there is on the GMAT, it's going to probably take me years. And I have 3 months. Even we just in one of our classes recently, one of our instructors has brought up a question, and there was a strategy that will help you get this question right in literally about 20 seconds. It was a difficult question in the top 10%, so only fewer than 10% of people get this right. And there was a really quick and really efficient strategy. And then, just to demonstrate, he brought up a forum from GMAT Club that had 77 pages of discussions. He actually went through all of them, not in a class, of course, and not a single comment mentioned that strategy. So there's a lot of information, but how do I cut through the clutter? So that's really important. And how do I focus on developing certain specific skills every week and then build on these skills every next week. So that's important. How do I know when I'm ready? Now, if I have that plan, if I have that structure, the second thing that's missing for most people is the accountability. Because, okay, so I have a plan, I need to go through this every week. How do I actually know if I'm going through this? Am I falling behind? Am I falling ahead? And that's why in our class, sometimes when we work with our clients, we have a culture of accountability where they tell us what they do every day. For some people, it's every day. For some people, it's every week. Whatever works best. So as little or as much push as necessary to know that, yes, I am on track, right? I need to have these milestones. So that's missing for a lot of people. That's why a lot of people really lose track of this. They don't really understand what's really important for them. That's why I was asking you this question at the beginning. And that's why 90% of people give up. And there's one final thing that's missing for many people, and that is a focus on the skills instead of memorization. Yes, there is so much information, and indeed, I can read all the books, I can read all the forums, memorize how somebody else did the questions. But if I don't have the skills, then how would I be able to do this question later on myself? Okay? So I need to have these skills developed so that these become habits now. I don't have to read the book when I'm going on a golf course. Right? I just need to do it. And it comes from practice, learning how to do it, and then practicing. Right? Unfortunately for the GMAT, it doesn't take years to do well, not like golf. So how can you do this? What is the next step? Where can you go from this? Well, believe it or not, all of these three missing pieces you can all get in one place. And you've come here today, you've come here because doing well on the GMAT and going to the school was really important to you. And now you know what is missing. It's the structure, accountability, and focus on the skills. So if you come here, and we have a very special program here at Admit Master, and that is a program that it's really all about giving each person that individual attention so that whatever is really important to them, they achieve their goals. And they're different for different people. For some people, it's 700 by August. For some people, it's 670 by December. Well, what's really important for each person, that is really the kind of program that we have here. Right? And we have sometimes our clients who would come and having worked with other tutors or taking other classes. For example, this client, she's actually just finished our course. She worked with a tutor for a year. And then she came to our program and she wrote these comments 2 weeks later. She said, wow, I've learned in 2 weeks more than what I learned a year. I'm already seeing a significant progress. Right? And she's right now well on her way to get 700. In fact, for her, she really wants to get 760. So we're going to work with her until she gets that score, if that's what she really wants. So this program is very unique and very special. It's an immersive program. It's a 6 to 12 week program, approximately 50 hours in a class. So it's either an in-person class. Right now, it's a live online class. It includes all of the study materials and it includes a ton of support. Really, it's a very personal support. We'll let you come back and retake the classes for free. And the most important thing is that people are asking, well, what's the guarantee for this course? And it's the best guarantee is that you're going to get coaching until you are done. So whichever score you want, now you may want 700, you may want 760 or 780. We will work with you as long as you're prepared to do the work. And the two upcoming programs right now, there's one program that starts on Tuesday this week, and there's a program that starts in July. If you go on our website, admitmaster.com/offer, you can register for these classes. You are going to have a special discount. It's not available on our website, but if you go to this offer page, you're going to get this discount. We'll verify that you actually came here, and we'll give you that discount. It's until midnight tomorrow. You have to book your consultation tomorrow. We'll call you either tomorrow or on Monday, and we'll process your registration. We just ask for a deposit of $500. And if you do that for the first 3 people, we're going to give you a free MBA resume editing. That's a $300 service that we provide as well. So we're actually going to work with a coach who's going to help you develop an MBA resume. And so it's a really valuable offer. Now, because we provide all of this, we can't really take everybody. So for us, for our company, what's really important for us is our reputation. So we've built our reputation. If you go on Google and if you see the comments, you've noticed that the reputation is that people who come to us are people who want to do very, very well on the GMAT. So that means that we can't really accept everybody. Sometimes we get people, especially when we're open, who would come and write checks in front of us. And we would say, no, thanks. I don't believe that you're serious. I don't believe that you're really prepared to do the work. So unfortunately, we can't accept you in our program. Our reputation is a little more important. Right? So if you are very serious, then I'd like to encourage you to go to this page and book your consultation so that we can actually chat with you. Now, you're going to find these special offers on this page. There's some special offers on self-study programs as well. And in terms of what to expect, and now the classes that we offer right now are live online classes. They work a little bit differently from this webinar because this webinar is kind of like a big lecture. We have a lot of people here, so we've muted all of you. You can't really talk right now back to us just because there's so many people here on this webinar. However, in a class, the class is fairly small. They usually approximately 10 to 15 people in our class. And that is why we can really give this personal attention. That's why we can't really accept everybody in our program. And that is also why the average score of people who come to our program is 670. So it's a pretty high score. If you can imagine that the average generally in the world is 560 among people who actually do the test. Remember, only 10% of people do the test. And 35% of our graduates will actually achieve that score of 700 or more. And so if you are very serious, we'd love to talk to you. Now, again, you go on our website, you book that consultation, we will call you. We don't accept everybody in the program, so it's not possible to come and just simply book a seat on our website. We do need to talk to make sure that everybody who comes to our program is very serious, prepared to work hard. And from our side, we are going to make sure that you are going to get that score. We'll certainly coach you until you get that score. Now, we're going to talk now for the next half an hour about what else you would need in order to get into a program. But before I sign off, I'm going to stick around, but before I sign off, I'm going to bring up a couple of things here. First of all, if you are still exploring and if you still are thinking of doing the GMAT sometimes in the future, then you could come to our next Master Pressure class that's going to be in July. That's July 14th. Also, if you would like to simply know where am I starting from, then you can go on this website, jmsb.trygmat.com, and you can take a practice test. Now, if you are already serious and you want to start soon, then make sure that you go on our website, admitmaster.com/offer, and these are the next 2 classes that are going to be available, the class on evenings and the class on weekend mornings. So the weekend mornings are 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern time. So depending on where you are in the world, that might work really well for you. Right now we have people in Malaysia, we have people in Bangladesh, we sometimes have people from Australia joining us for the weekend classes, because then it's still perhaps an evening for you, but you can still join. Now, if you'd like for me to follow up with you, if you're really, really serious, what I'd like to do is I'm going to launch just a really quick poll while we're doing the switch over, while I'm passing control to Beth. But because I can't really contact everybody right now, I'm going to just ask you a really, really quick question. If you'd like for me to get in touch with you as soon as possible so that you can actually take advantage of this offer, we can have a discussion. Again, right now, there is no commitment that we'll accept you in our program. Right? We want to talk, make sure that this is the right fit. So if you'd like for me to get in touch with you right away, please choose that. If you'd like for me to talk to other people first, and you're not in any rush, and you can come back sometimes in the future when you're ready, then again, please choose that. And if after coming to this webinar, you realize, well, that's not the right career really for me, I'm going to do something else, then please choose that as well. Well, again, thanks so much. If you can please put in the chat box, what's the biggest takeaway from this class? I would be really curious. While we're doing the switchover, if you have any questions for me or questions for Beth, you can put them in the Q&A box, and we're going to be answering these questions as we go through the rest of this seminar. But I'm going to now unshare my screen and let Beth share hers so that she can share some of the strategies, some of the inside strategies of what would it actually take to get into a top business school.
Great, thanks for that, Sergey. I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, it says, yeah, can you enable me for sharing?
I believe I did in the future. Oh,
I had to log in and log out on your computer.
Okay, got it. Yeah, perfect.
Thank
All
you.
right, should be all done. Thank you, Beth.
No problem. Thank you, Sergey. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I guess I'll turn on my camera. There we go. So hello, everyone. My name is Beth McKenna. I'm the Graduate Student Recruitment Officer at the John Molson School of Business. Oh, let me make sure my slides are on here. Can everyone see that? That's fine. Everyone can see the slide up on the screen. Fantastic. Great. So let me just start the presentation here. So my name is Beth McKenna. I'm the Graduate Student Recruitment Officer at the John Molson School of Business. Sorry, make sure that works. And here's my contact on the screen. So if you have any questions or if you want to schedule time to meet with me to talk more about admissions, I'm more than happy to do that. So if you see there, it's on the screen. My email to reach me directly is gradvisor.jmsb. And if you feel like you want to meet with me one-on-one over a Zoom call, I'd be happy to do that as well. You just go into my Calendly and you choose a time that works for you, and I'd be happy to schedule a time to meet over Zoom and answer more of your questions from an admissions point of view. I'm the Graduate Student Recruitment Officer at the John Molson School of Business, so I'm located in Montreal, Canada. Many of you, I'm sure, are from Montreal. Of course, Montreal, Toronto, and surrounding area. And if you're not, fantastic. It's a great chance to talk about about admissions and about what most business schools are looking for in an application. So GMAT's a very small part of the admissions process. It is certainly it's a very important part. And the thing is that many top schools, including us, require the GMAT in the fact that it shows your ability to critical think and handle complex reasoning. So in our program, which is a case format program, we do need the GMAT. Make sure that in a case format program that your partners, your group members are going to be the top overall thinkers and strategists and reasoners, that have a great classroom environment. So that's really important in a case format program like ours, and that's why most large English speaking MBA programs are going to require you to take the GMAT. And again, we really maintain the quality of our MBA program by requiring the GMAT. We don't waive it, and that's the same as many other top schools. And that they also want to ensure that students who are coming to the program are among the best and are among the best critical thinkers and reasoners and strategists, and also to maintain the quality of their program and maintain the bar at a high level. So it's great that you're here, because again, if you're looking at the GMAT, then you are definitely looking at some of the top business schools, because many schools, it differs for what criteria that an admissions program would waive GMAT. But often, schools don't waive it due to work experience. They don't waive it due to a master's degree. They don't waive it to an MBA from another country. They really, top business schools that are really of the highest quality are going to make you show that you want this MBA and that you're serious about it by going to go write that GMAT. But let's get started, because there's so much more to the application than the GMAT. So I'll put in a quick plug here for the John Molson School of Business. This is just some of our quick stats. So we are one of the larger business schools in Canada, and we also have a very global community. Again, I'm going to be focusing mostly on admission stuff in this session. So I'll just jump over that. Most business schools really look at the quality of applicants over the quantity. So that is certainly something that's very important, is that many undergraduate programs, it's like if you have the grades in high school, you're in for many programs. For an MBA program, it's really about your work experience. It's really about your your GMAT score. It's about your references. It's about your statement of purpose. It's about your grades. It's about your video interviews. It's about a lot of different parts of the application process. So I'll speak just for us as a recruiter. We take a holistic approach, meaning we look at all parts of the application, and we look at every single part of your application holistically. So if your GMAT is right above our minimum, but yet you have outstanding work experience, you have community experience that you've shown you're a team player, so many different there's so many additional things moving at the same time when you apply for an MBA program. Let's keep moving here. So again, there are many different master's programs in business. So there is a MSc program, which many schools offer, more of a research program. And then what I think most of you are going for today sounds like an MBA. Both programs do require GMAT. Both of them will, have different, really focus on different things. Master's is like a specialized degree in one area. So if you're really interested in going to marketing and you want to do a thesis in marketing and you only want to do marketing, that's fantastic. You want to take more of an advanced approach to it, that would be the MSc. An MBA is really more of a general degree. It's really, every MBA really covers a whole bunch of different bases, covers a whole bunch of different topics, a whole bunch of different skills. MBAs are usually more hands-on than research degrees. And also we do require work experience. Many MBAs require work experience because it is a managerial degree. And it also shows that you're able to put what you're learning in class in actual real life situations that you've had already. So you're able to kind of contextualize everything by the work experience that you've already had out in the field. So we take a holistic approach, as I mentioned already. The MBA program and the MSc programs at John Molson take a very holistic approach to admissions, meaning we look at everything. We don't just look at that magical GMAT score. So the GMAT is a huge indicator. There's so much more in the admissions process. And really what we look for is we look to see that the applicants meet all the minimums first. And then from there, it's really competitive. It's really a matter of, considering that you're going to be in a pool where, it's not just having the minimums that get you in. It's really about showing about why you are outstanding compared to the other applicants. So in doing that, we look at your academic credentials. For us, we look at your grades from all of your studies, so all of your years of all of your degrees. So if you just have a bachelor's, we're going to look at all 3 or 4 years, depending on what system you learned in. If you have a master's, we're going to take that into account. If you have any graduate diplomas or a PhD, we're also going to take that into account as well. So it really is a holistic approach. Some people are like, oh, can you not look at that semester? That semester wasn't great. Or can you just look at my 2 years? No. We look at everything holistically. If there's a trend, which most students do, often have bumps in the start of their degree and then kind of smooth into it and do well by the end of the program, that's something that we take into account as well, and it's pretty normal because we see thousands of applications a year. Work experience. So work experience, it is not mandatory for all of our programs, but it is mandatory for the MBA program. The thing is that work experience is always an asset to have. So business schools are going to really just look to see if you have actual experience out in the world. So if you've actually done, you've handled workplace problems, that you've handled tough group situations, that you have thought strategically in the workplace, and that you have looked at better ways of operating and doing things. We do look for that. So we look for work experience, and it can be work experience in any area. So in an MBA program, one of the biggest demographics is engineers. A lot of engineers tend to take MBAs. We have, artists, we have teachers. When I started my MBA, my background is in education as well as in music. So I have that, and again, I've started an MBA myself. So people come in with all different backgrounds into an MBA program. And we can't work experience in any field after your bachelor's degree. Of course, extracurricular involvement, like any professional program you look at, the extracurricular involvement is really important. It shows character. It shows your devotion to, to enhancing your skills. It shows your involvement. It shows your drive. It shows a lot of different things. So extracurricular involvement is always an asset to have. If you have some during your bachelor's, fantastic. If you have some, even if you have, if you're working right now and you're part of a community group, if you're volunteering, if you're part of different initiatives, it's certainly, that also plays a role as well. So that's certainly valuable. Communication skills. So communication skills are really important. If you want to be a future manager or business leader, you need to be able to speak with people, and you need to be able to sell yourself. You need to be able to really speak well, confidently, clearly convey messages, and really be personable. So that is something that we look for, and most MBA programs are going to look for either in your video interview or in-person interview, depending on the school. And also, we're going to look at that in your emails with us. So if you're emailing with a recruiter, if you're emailing with the admissions team, if you're emailing with any program director, they're going to look at how you communicate. So, avoid using, slang or shorthand writing or things like that. And again, feel it out with the school. I know with us at John Molson, we're very personable. We're very, we're looking for people who have great attitudes, who are really outgoing, who are very well spoken, and that's what we look for, and that's how we are, and that's what we look for in our students. Leadership potential. So leadership potential is super important. Again, we want to see that you have experience taking the lead in various projects. So you don't have to be a manager already. That's kind of a misnomer. You don't already have to be a manager, but we want to see experience where you have managed a project, where you have led a team through a different initiative, where you've managed an event, or where you have taken leadership roles and looked after things, project management, time management, public speaking. We do look for things like that in the application. So make sure that is there, and also the fit. So do your homework on the program that you're looking at. So always make sure that you are a good fit for the program you're looking for, and also make sure that your priorities and your goals line up with the strengths of the school. That being said, demonstrating your academic potential. So find out if the school you're applying for has a minimum requirement. So again, you need to make sure, some schools will say a bachelor's degree. Some schools like ours will say bachelor's with a GPA of 3.0, and we have the equivalencies on our website if you're not from Canada. And again, make sure that you meet the minimum requirements. Some schools will be a little bit flexible on the GPA, some won't. It depends on the program for some schools. And always, if you don't meet the GPA, talk to a recruiter and make sure that you know how they're going to evaluate your application, and if you have to take some academic upgrading, because it does happen. If your GPA is just really, from your undergrads, really, really, really low, we may ask you to go do some, just show some academic improvement first. So always talk to the recruiter and see how admissions are approached, and see, what is the best situation in your case. I know for myself as a recruiter, excuse me, I usually give here's your options, or here's 3 different ways to approach it, A, B, and C. If A doesn't work out, look at B. If B doesn't work out, look at C. So again, that's often what we do for students who may not meet the full requirements of the program, but again, it really depends on the whole profile. For us, you upload your unofficial transcripts. So most universities, you can get your transcripts online as an unofficial PDF copy. So it is pretty easy to do that. And again, we take that for the application. So if you're accepted, however, we want your university to send us a physical printed copy, sealed by them, sent from the university directly to us. But again, for the purpose of assessment and applying, we do allow you to just upload unofficial transcripts. And then if you're not, of course, it depends on the school, but for us, if you're not in French, if your transcripts are not in French or English, they have to be certified by an official translator. So again, but we accept all documents in French or English. But again, check on the school and see what they're able to do. Most Quebec-based schools will accept in English and French. So preparing for the GMAT, Sergey has already given a fantastic lecture on preparing for the GMAT. Just, a couple of things here, a couple of guidelines of what we typically recommend as far as prepping. Sergey's gone through all of this and he's done a fantastic job of that. And so again, typically we do recommend when planning your application to leave time to rewrite the GMAT if you have to, because if you have to rewrite it, you have to wait 16, again, I'm talking about the in-person version, I'm not talking about the online version. If you have to rewrite the in-center test again, you have to wait 16 days from the time you wrote it until the next time you're able to write it. So do keep that in mind, that kind of waiting period, and make sure that you leave time in your application to get, in case of that, so that you do leave time that if you have to rewrite it, you do have the time to go and rewrite it if you have a test center near you that's open. As Sergey mentioned about the GMAT, 5 times in a 12-month period, 8 times in your life, and then as I mentioned already, 16 days between tests. GMAT average. So for our MBA program, the GMAT average is around 640. That's the average. It's around 3.3 GPA, 5.5 years work experience, and a 640 GMAT. However, that if you have 2 years experience and you can still apply, and again, you'd have to show a strong GMAT and strong GPA and strong other parts of your application. That's what I mean by we take a holistic approach. And taking a holistic approach is not one part of your application, that will compensate for the rest of it. So really make sure that, if you do meet the minimum requirements and you do have some strong traits, definitely still apply. Again, because it's such a holistic approach, we will look at everything you have to offer and all parts of your candidacy. So do keep in mind about that. I'll keep going a bit here. So leveraging your work experience. So again, not all of our programs require work experience. So our MSc does not require work experience, and our Master of Supply Chain Management does not require work experience. Neither does the Graduate Diploma in Business Admin. Neither does the PhD. So those research or one course-based program that doesn't require work experience. Our MBA in Investment Management also doesn't require work experience. But if you have work experience and you're applying for a program that doesn't require it, it's still really, really valuable. So work experience can really add what you bring to discussions. It can really add to what you bring to the class. And it also helps contextualize everything. So if you have work experience when you're coming into a program, even if it's not an MBA, you still have the opportunity to really add to the discussion, and also adds depth into your own work and your own contextualization of everything. So there's that. And I mean, you've already seen that. The rest of that is all on the screen right there. Also keep in mind that after the MBA, you'll be looking for a job, likely, if you're not working already. Employers and recruiters, corporate recruiters, often look for at least 2 to 3 years of work experience from any MBA candidate, up to about 9, 10 years, typically, with some exceptions made. So do keep in mind that if you are getting an MBA, if you're looking for an MBA that doesn't require any work experience, it is going to be difficult when you graduate, because by default, employers are looking for people with an MBA with at least 3 to 4 years of work experience for the jobs that they're looking for. So again, it is important that even if you're looking at an MBA that doesn't require any work experience, which there's a few out there, do make sure that the after effect of that is that it's going to be tough. And do talk to the career office, make sure that you're in a good place, because again, the employers are going to look at more than just the fact that you have an MBA. They're going to look at where you're at in your career so far and what hands-on experience in the workforce you have. So what kind of work experience are we looking for? So typically for us, it's really more important about the quality. It depends. We really look at how you have progressed in your career, how you've grown. So we look for people who have made lateral moves or slightly upwards moves and have shown career growth. So we're looking for people who have moved around to learn new skills, who have really gone through different kinds of positions and different kinds of jobs. And we're looking for people who show a real drive to succeed, and a real drive to grow in their career. So keep that in mind. It's super important. It's really for us about quality over quantity. So someone, if they have 10 years at an entry-level position and someone comes in with 8 years and has shown rapid growth up the ladder, the person with 8 years could be considered higher, because again, it's really the growth and the kind of responsibilities you've been taking on and the growth in yourself professionally. So it's really about the quality of your work experience over the quantity of the work experience. The nature of your work. So the nature of your work should be outlined on your CV. It's not always clear to everyone when they apply. I've seen CVs where it's really not clear how some positions have differed. It's not clear about how some people have evolved in their career. Work experience isn't often clearly defined. So do make sure that it's very clearly defined and that the evolution of your career is there certainly as well. Also, we want to see your achievements. So if you have any kind of professional achievements where you've won an award at work, personal achievements. So again, if you've done something big and that you want to, really tell us about it, great. Again, people who are, someone got their Six Sigma, someone got PMP, someone got CFA, someone got, which again, those are professional designations further down, but people who perhaps ran a marathon, ran a half marathon, worked on a fundraising event that raised X number of dollars, that was part of a theater troupe and did productions all over your area, things like that. We want to see that, because again, that shows more about your work ethic and you as a person, and also you're striving to go above and beyond your expectations at work. Volunteer work, so I kind of touched on that, leadership skills, professional designations, and any kind of entrepreneurial ventures you've had. So if you have had any kind of experience where you were perhaps a freelance artist and that you have a track record, or that you have an online portfolio or things like that, if you were involved in any kind of entrepreneurial work, you're self-employed, we want to see that. If you have a side hustle, we definitely want to see a bit of that. You know, as long as we can kind of measure that or see your success, if we Googled you and something came up, something like that, where we can actually testify to that. We don't value one sector over the other. So as I mentioned earlier, MBA students, we have people coming from business backgrounds, from administration, from engineering, from people who are you know, artists, who are actors, who are teachers, who are lawyers, who are doctors, who are researchers, coming from all different industries. So there's no sector that's valued more than another sector, but it's really about what you did and how your career expanded from there. So that's what we're looking at. And we're also looking at your full-time post-graduation work experience. So for us, we don't, because we require a minimum of 2 years for our MBA program at John Molson, we don't count internships or co-ops towards that. We do think they're great, they're fantastic, that definitely shows towards your character, but towards our 2-year minimum requirement for work experience for the MBA, we need that it's after your graduation. So after you graduate, that's when the clock starts ticking to get that 2-year period down. And we look at the 2-year period at the time of applying, because especially given today's job market, we want to see the 2 years by the time that you've applied to the program, not the time that you enter the program. So let's keep going. Statement of excuse me. Statement of purpose and essays. Most universities, if not all of them at the grad level, are going to ask you for either a statement of purpose, some essay questions, or some video essays, or even a mix of all those. The essays, it's really a chance for us to learn more about you. It's really a great chance for us to see your soft skills, your communication skills, to know a bit about your story, your personality, your ability to sell yourself. We really look for that. So the statements of purpose, they're very valuable, and the admissions committee does read them. They do read them, and it's really important to note that to really say something about yourself. We've seen, it's common to see statements of purpose that are really filled with philosophical fluff, or things that don't really apply to the student, or have even shown that the student has read into what the program offers or has done any research about the program. I've told a couple students, if I'm able to take out the word John Molson on your statement of purpose and put in any other university's name and still have it be true, you need to review your letter, your statement of purpose. So it has happened where it's almost obvious that the student is being so generalized and so philosophical that you can just delete out the university's name and put in another university's name and it'd still be an okay letter. Like it'd still be kind of an okay letter, and there's nothing in there specific to that school. So make sure that your letter or your statement of purpose is specific. Make sure that you've done your homework and it shows your fit with the school that you're applying to, and that you have put the effort into it, that you've put effort and work into it, and you have proofread it. As I kind of alluded to already, don't copy and paste your letters. We can often tell. So as I've caught a couple students who come to see me and talk about their statement of purpose, you know, it's kind of easy to tell when you're kind of just, you know, creating a boilerplate statement of purpose and sending it out to 5 different schools. So as I mentioned already, they are a reflection of yourself, so please be specific in your letters. As far as who reads them, the only people who read them are the admissions committee. And if you want me to read it as a recruiter and you're in the application phase, fine, I'll read it. But that's the only people who read it, otherwise are the admissions committee. So it's not, you know, it's not going out to a huge amount of people, it's going out to, you know, a very small handful of people who read it. So of course, be specific. So again, tell us your story, write your own essay, talk about your life experience, and also tell the admissions committee why you're a good fit for our program. So it's not just about saying, well, I'm a great fit for an MBA program. It's really about doing your homework on that university and telling them why you're a good fit for their specific program. And if you can draw any links to what they offer and mention what they offer in the program and what really draws you to their school and why you're a good fit for their school, that means gold on the statement of purpose. And if you're really writing it specific to the school and you've done your homework and you've done your research, and even if you've reached out to alumni and you've spoken with alumni and you know what the program has to offer and you know why you want to do the program, that it really means a lot and adds extra value to your application. Of course, it shouldn't even have to say, proofread your work before you submit. So picking referees. So most MBA programs require at least 2 to 3 referees. Make sure that they're people that you've worked with and who know you well, because again, it's not just about getting the highest person in your organization, the CEO or the COO, to write you a letter if you don't report directly to them. So we don't want, you know, a letter saying John Smith worked at company ABC from this date to this date signature, because that's more of just a testament to your, kind of like proof of employment. We don't want that. We want a reference letter that really talks about your strengths, talks about why an MBA is good for you and why this is a great next step of your career. Again, really have a good chat with your referees. Explain what they should highlight about you. Talk about, your different skills, about your strengths, about how this could help you in the next step in your career. Always talk to them before you apply. So at John Molson, when you apply and you pay for your application, within about 6 to 12 hours, we're going to send an automated email to your referee requesting them to upload a reference letter. So please, before you apply, make sure you speak to your referees first. And of course, send them your resume. If you haven't talked to them in a few months to a year or two, send them your resume and also send them a copy of your statement of purpose so they know how to align their letter with your strengths. So be ready to promote yourself. So this has been a new thing that John Molson's added, was a video interview over Kira Talent. The video interview is so important to have because it really shows your interpersonal abilities and your interpersonal skills and your ability to sell yourself. It's really important. We've seen people with amazing GMAT scores, with amazing profiles, and then people, if they can't actually have the charisma and the ability to verbally communicate and really sell themselves in a video essay situation, then that causes problems in the admissions process. So make sure, again, for an MBA program, most schools are looking for a whole, like a whole package. So again, you have to be great, personable. You have to be able to really sell yourself, be concise, and again, if you're having a live interview, because some schools do a live interview, have questions and really engage with the recruiter or with the admissions team who's interviewing you. So it's really important for that. For the video interviews, make sure that you dress for like as if it was a job interview. So make sure that it is that you are dressed professionally, at least from the waist up, for the interview, and that you have a clean background because again, everything reflects on how you are as a person. And of course, really understand why we need a video interview. So we really need it because we need to see how you are, how your verbal abilities are to really, to really speak publicly. Because again, any MBA program, you're going to be required to give presentations, to be public speaking, to be debating, to be in group work, to really be personable and to be collaborative. And also there's case competitions and things like that. We need to make sure that you have those skills and are able to really sell yourself. So that's why the video interview is really an integral part of the admissions process. And that's why many MBA programs require them to make sure that we get the most outstanding and of course well-rounded students into our MBA programs. So what to convey? So in the video interview, what to convey? So again, be prepared. So please do your homework on the institution and as well as on the curriculum of the program that you're applying for and being interviewed on, just so you have talking points and just so you're able to really go a bit deeper in conversation than really keeping it general, so that you're able to actually talk about why their program really attracts you. Reflect on your goals, of course, connect your goals with what the school has to offer. Again, talk about any weak points in your application. We prefer that you address weak points in your application rather than try and hide them. And then of course, if it's a live interview, prepare questions, so that shows even more interest and have done even more research into the MBA program. If you haven't, if you didn't study in a country where the first official language of that country is English and in an English language university in that country, you may need to write the TOEFL or the IELTS. So there's a requirement for the TOEFL or the IELTS. Most schools, including us, now accept the Duolingo English test as a third option due to the closures of testing centers all around the world. So we accept the TOEFL, the IELTS, and the Duolingo English test. The minimum score for Duolingo is a 120. There's that. I'll leave that up there on the screen for a minute. If you did study in Quebec and you did do a French cégep degree as well as a French bachelor's degree, you are exempted from the TOEFL by law. So really planning your time effectively. So to wrap it up, really this is kind of our recommended pathway to applying for an MBA program. No one really applies for an MBA overnight. It's really a thought out process. And as Sergey has already kind of mentioned, it's a process where you have to really, the GMAT is a major hurdle of applying for the MBA program, but the GMAT is going to show that you're ready for this and that you are, it's going to show, it often correlates with how you do in the program is how you do in the GMAT. So it is certainly an important test to take, and most high quality, top ranked MBA programs are going to be firm on you taking the GMAT to make sure that you are at the top, one of the top prospects for their program. So it is a difficult exam. I've taken it twice myself, so I certainly understand that. But again, it is something where it's worth it. It changes how you think, and it does push on every part of your brain. But it is a test that does change how you think going forward, and it's one that's really going to help you in your MBA program. As you see there, that's kind of what we recommend as a timeline to prep for your application for an MBA program. It can flex a little bit depending on how fast you are at writing a statement of purpose. Things like that can be pretty quick, and it all really again comes down to it's all kind of focused around the prep for the GMAT. So the GMAT's often the longest part of applying for an MBA program, but trust me, it's certainly worth it. So just to wrap it up, again, for any MBA program, make sure you figure out the reason you want to do a graduate degree. So always do it for the right reasons. We don't recommend that people say, I'm doing an MBA because I want a job. It shouldn't be that. An MBA is a 1 to 2 year commitment, or even 3 if you're doing it part-time. So 1 to 3 year commitment, and it is certainly going to be a flexing of your time. It's going to be a flexing of your personal life. It's going to be essentially like kind of like having a kid, honestly. It's going to be kind of where you have to really schedule your life around it and make sure that everyone is on board with it. And again, it's 1 to 3 years of time, but it's certainly worth it. But what I'm saying is that make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and that you are passionate for doing 9 to 15 hours of extra work per class per week. So that's typically the time for an MBA that's required, and make sure that you have the time and you're able to really devote it, or you're going to be doing this GMAT and not be able to survive in the MBA program. So make sure you have the flexibility in your personal life to do that. Do the research. So, if you're applying for, John Molson, if you're applying for any other program around Canada or abroad, do the research. So most university recruiters, most of my colleagues who work in other business schools, we all are very open to helping you. When campus was open, I was always happy to have students come in and do a class visit, come in and sit in and watch a class and just observe for an evening. Reading the website helps, talking with the recruiter, go for a coffee with the recruiter and do a walkabout of campus, which is something I do quite often with students. Meet with the team. So again, meet with myself or my colleagues, and really it helps to have many touch points into the school, because again, recruiters are the ones who can really talk about the MBA program from every aspect. So I meet students who are starting the program all the way through until they graduate, and I still stay in touch with them during the program, and we can really talk about the MBA path and what to expect over doing the program over a full-time period or doing it over a part-time period. Recruiters and recruitment staff tend to be quite involved in the student experience once you're in the program, to still make sure that everything's going well, and of course always to be sharing stories with prospects. Create a list of what matters to you. So of course, every MBA program is different, every school is different, every university is different. Make sure you have a list of what matters to you and what you want to achieve, and make sure the schools that you're thinking of really fit that profile. So again, it's not always rankings. Of course, we are ranked #1 in Canada for ROI among all the MBA programs in Canada. John Molson's doing quite well. But of course, make sure that the schools that you're looking at are ones that fit your goals, fit your approach, and fit how you want to that are really going to be able to help you get where you want to be after your program. Of course, plan your finances, manage your time. Of course, it's going to be costly to do an MBA program. Always check what the tuition rates are, because different MBA programs in different provinces cost different amounts. For us, we're a $6,000 MBA program for Quebec residents. It's $14,000 for Canadians who are not in Quebec, and it's $40,000 for international students. And then always think about the future. So, plan ahead and have realistic post-MBA career plans. And of course, if you're if you're accepted, start networking. So most universities have a accepted students Facebook group, which we do. And other things like that to help you get connected with your peers as soon as possible. So there's that. At that, I'm going to leave my contact there. Sergey, I guess we'll take questions.
Yes, absolutely. We already have a couple of questions. And the questions are, does it matter how early you take the GMAT before applying to the program, or is it necessary to take it as close as possible? I could maybe answer this question if you don't mind. The GMAT
Mhm.
exams are valid for 5 years, and there's absolutely no difference. You can keep me honest here, Beth. There's absolutely no difference whether for the school, whether you've taken it 4 years and 11 months ago, or you've just taken it a month ago.
You're right. There's no difference. As long as the score is valid. So, I've seen students, right at the end of that 5-year period trying to sneak in an MBA application. It's really best if you apply, we want that the score is still valid. If it does expire, we will ask you to write it again.
One thing that I would suggest though is don't leave it till the last minute if you can.
I agree. I totally agree.
Earlier is better. And ideally, if now is the time when you have time to study for the GMAT, then study now. Don't wait until later. As long as you're going, if you have time now and you know that you're going to do your MBA application in the next 5 years, start now.
Yeah, I totally recommend that to people. Even if you don't have the work experience, I tell people start the GMAT now. I said, take an easier approach to it rather than cramming it all in 6 weeks.
Exactly. Yes, we normally recommend 3 to 4 months if you want to get a competitive score. And again, a competitive score is going to be important. First of all, it is going to improve your chances of admission. Secondly, it is going to help you qualify for scholarships.
Yep.
And thirdly, many recruiters are going to, again, at the same GMAT conference, I saw some statistics, which I actually was quite surprised to hear, is that in certain industries, over 80% of recruiters will ask you for the GMAT score. So after your MBA, they'll actually ask you, what was your GMAT score? And very often they wouldn't ask for the GPA, but they'll say, what's your GMAT score?
It's true. I do know of some people who, for the major consulting firms, they do want to see a GMAT score.
Exactly.
Yeah, good. Sergey, where do you want to start with the questions? Questions in the chat or questions in Q&A?
I think, well, I've answered most of the questions from the chat. And there's, so James had a comment that he's already spoken with the GMSB advisor. So that's amazing. And then there was another question from Ajoke is, I've submitted the application to JMSB, been scheduled to take my GMAT in July. Will the application still be reviewed by admissions committee without the GMAT score? I believe you kind of touched upon this.
Yeah, so the thing is, the acceptance rate for John Molson and many MBA programs, they do vary. They're highly competitive. People who have all the parts, who meet all the minimum requirements, can be refused just due to competition. So that being said, we do not assess your application until the GMAT score is in. That being said, our deadline has been extended to July 1st because of COVID. However, on a case-by-case basis, it is possible to submit the GMAT if you are taking it in July. That's totally fine. Ajoke, I'd recommend you send me an email, and I'm going to connect you with my colleague Leah to let her know when your GMAT is going to come in. We're doing what we can to accommodate. Just send me an email directly. You see the email on the screen, or beth.mckenna@concordia.ca. Either one will reach me. And send me an email, and I'll help you connect with Leah to let her know when about the late GMAT coming in.
Okay, perfect. And also keep in mind that JMSB has a start date in January. So do some of the other schools as well. So if you're missing the September deadline, right, you can still start in January, right, Beth?
Yeah. So if everything is too late for fall, again, it sounds like Ajoke is going to be okay, but again, he needs to contact me directly. So yes, if you're kind of feeling that you're too pushed for fall, we do allow you to defer your application to winter. However, Ajoke, okay, you applied for winter. Okay, send me an email and I'm going to help you with that. Send me an email directly and give me your exact date of your GMAT in the email, and we'll go from there. So send me an email and we'll talk about that more one-on-one. I think it's more of a one-on-one case, Sergey, and I'll take care of that one directly.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I would like to say the same thing. If you'd like to chat personally about your GMAT prep, just again, I'm going to get in touch with you if you've already indicated that, but you can also just go on our website, admitmaster.com, sign up for a consultation. I've also posted my email address in the chat box. We'll be following up with an email, most likely tomorrow, just because we want to download the recording of this webinar and post it. So we will share the recording with you. and you are going to be able to watch it again. So please look for that email. The link is going to be there, and all of our contact information, all of these offers are going to be there as well. There's a quick question from Kenny. What's the ideal range GMAT scores that they look for? So consulting firms generally are looking for scores of 710 and above. Yeah. There are some exceptions, but if you're looking at the top management consulting firms, generally you have to have at least 710. So will be the case for certain investment banks, and even certain technology firms, and even utility firms, financial services firms are looking for the GMAT scores. But for top consulting firms, generally 710 and above.
That's it. I have heard of people retaking the GMAT even like during their MBA program just for these consulting jobs.
That's right. And I've also heard from a friend who works at a consulting firm that some of the consulting firms have now changed the policy. They're no longer going to accept retaken GMAT. So they are going to insist that your GMAT score it's not all of the firms, but some of the firms have adopted this policy. You have to show them the official score report where the GMAT is actually the score before you apply. So be careful if you are really thinking of going to top consulting firms. But some of them, some of the schools would still be okay with, some of the companies would still be okay if you retake it in the future. But I mean, really, you wouldn't have time to no pressure, and you wouldn't really have time to retake your GMAT because you're going to be very busy with an MBA program. You can consider a GMAT course is your first MBA course. It is really going to train you for doing well in your MBA program, and it's really going to give you that intensive sort of a training. And that's why we talked so much about the skills. The skills you're going to develop are the skills that are going to help you succeed in the MBA program. But the MBA program, I mean, for me personally, it was more intensive than the GMAT. And you have deadlines that are not something you can choose. The professor sets the deadline, you gotta meet it, and you have 5 different projects to work on at the same time.
Yeah.
So don't bank on retaking your test.
So, I guess what you're saying is just do it right the first time.
Exactly. Yes.
Great. I see there's one in the Q&A. Mally Hay is asking, it says, I have mastering commercial management. I have 8 years of work experience in the marketing field. I'm ready for the IELTS exam. It's my dream to be one of Concordia University students. Fantastic. So Mally Hay, if you want to chat more with me directly, my contact is at the bottom of the screen. So it's at the bottom of the screen. If you want to contact me directly, we can chat more about MBA or MSc. I'd be happy to chat with you. Send me an email and we'll set up a time to meet. Great. Was that all? Is that great?
Yeah, I believe that we don't have any more questions. So thanks so much for sticking around here for an extra few minutes to answer these questions.
It's a heat wave right now, so it's like, what better? It's great to stick around and do GMAT.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Beth. I'm going to just for a moment, if you don't mind, I'm going to share the page with the events, the upcoming events.
Sure. Yeah, I'll stop my share.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you so much. So again, please go on this link at admitmaster.com/offer to register for all of these events, and please look for that email with the recording. Please feel free to share this recording, but if you'd like any of your friends to participate in any of these upcoming workshops, please ask them again to go to the same website and register for any of our interactive workshops. Feel free to come back to these workshops again. We are going to be doing very similar questions, so the content is going to be very, very similar. However, if you are really serious, then please reach out and we'll talk about the training that will actually help you get to a score of 700 or more.
Great.
All right, one person raised the hand. So again, if you have a question, just please put your question in the chat box or in a Q&A box, and we're going to answer it.
I think that was Mally Hay, and I told them that I would get in touch with me directly, and they have my contact.
Okay, perfect.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you, Survey.
Okay, thank you so much, and have an awesome rest of the weekend. We'll see you in our next class shortly.